Well, I've had a big weekend. Let's talk about it. So, this is the 60 cards I took to NA Continentals this weekend. I'm going to quickly go over just a brief overview of every card in the deck, and then we'll start getting down to specifics. So, I have 3 Chernabog's Followers, 2 Diablo Obedient Raven, 3 Magic Broom, 2 Olaf, 4 Cursed Merfolk, 4 Pegasus, 18 1-drops in total, in case you were wondering, 4 Madam Mim Snake, 4 Goo Tomago, 2 Sir Hiss, 4 Ursula Deceiver, 4 Madam Mim Fox, 3 Merlin Crab, 3 White Rose, 3 Kit Cloud Kicker, 2 Lyle Tiberius Rourke, 3 Prince Phillip, 4 Genie, 4 Merlin Goat, 2 Merlin Rabbit, and 2 of the Upper Shift Pegasus. So let's start talking about this with the thing that probably draws the most attention, all the 1-drops. I very deliberately decided that 1-drops were more powerful in this deck than they are in others, at least into the current metagame. There is something so powerful about the 1-drop on 1, 2 1-drops on 2 play that I noticed from EU Continentals that gives us a little bit of an edge compared to other decks. Going wide right now is fairly strong. So why is that? Grab Your Swords is not popular right now. Steel Song, which is the biggest Grab Your Swords user, their worst matchup is red-blue, as probably as purple-steel as well. And so these high-cost, uninkable cards that are essentially dead in the matchup are just too risky to run. So the meta call of all the 1-drops, I think, really came in clutch. So let's talk about the math behind them for a second. So we have the 18 1-drops, which gives us a very mathematically high chance probability of hitting the 3 we want to see in the opening hand. But more so than that, as we see them throughout the game, we can develop our board. So what I mean by that is, instead of going tall, say we go 1-1-drop on 2, 1, 2 on 2, on 3 we play a 2-drop and a 1-drop. So we could play our Ursula Deceiver, our Sir Hiss, and another 1-drop out of our hand. 1-drops are incredibly powerful before you hit the 6, 7, 8 ink turns, when they can be interacted with less and less, and the cards your opponent's playing, such as like a Brawl, you're trading in just a favorable ink position. If they Brawl my Merfolk, I'm usually happy with that because they spent a larger portion of their turn playing that Brawl than I did playing the Merfolk. So if I just continue going wide until the late game, when these cards like the Sisu Shift can come out, Madame Medusa's Be Prepared, of course, I look to narrow down my board and finish the game out with my powerful instant lore gain bounce options. Let's talk about the 1-drop specifically. I have a 3-3 split of Magic Broom and Chernabog's Followers. That's very intentional because I feel like they shine in different matchups. Chernabog is incredible against Ruby Amethyst, because it checks their Flynn Rider on turn 2, so they don't get that 3 lore for free, which matters so much in that matchup. Not that Broom's any slouch, but now when we look at Broom, the matchups I love to see it in are the Daisy Duck matchups. If I'm up against Diggy Diggy Hole songs and they open Daisy and I follow up with a Broom, I'm feeling very confident about my chances in that game. 3-3 split because I needed to make room, and I decided I was sold on 18 1-drops. I just had to figure out the specific ones there. 2 Diablo, 2 Olaf. So both of these are more geared towards the songs matchup on the draw. The Olaf especially is the best on the draw play against songs. He just can survive anything they can do, and it leaves you a body to bounce. It leaves you a body to boost with crab. It's just a very powerful play. And what a lot of Songs players would do to me all weekend is they would still sing their Let the Storm Rage On onto my Olaf, taking 2 damage off, but that still let me buff him with crab and remove the Olaf from the board, which is very powerful for dodging Rapunzel, which we'll talk about here in a bit. The Diablo is a fine option on the draw against Songs, but it, if it gets shot, it's just gone. So you don't have that body to bounce for the turn 2 Madam Mim Snake, or to continue developing your board with more 1-drops. But Diablo, as opposed to all the other 1-drops, I think is the hardest scaling 1-drop in the deck. Because if they answer it, it becomes another card. And as this deck filters through, we mulligan in for so many 1-drops in the early game that when we get into the late game, every card we draw, since if we're keeping, 4 or 5 1-drops in our opening hand and looking to get them in the early game, we have a higher chance of drawing one of our more powerful cards later on. Diablo is very good against red-blue, red-purple, the only and it's fine in the start against Songs. It's just a 0-1 stat line, and that is a bit of a hindrance in comparison. The 4 Merfolk was on and off from this card. I almost didn't play it. I switched back probably the week before. It was just getting answered by everything, and Queen of Hearts and Tipo and Red Blue was just keeping it down, and it's not very good into Songs. There were no situations I actually knew I was up against Songs blind. I played against all my Songs opponent early on in the day, and I had no clue what they were on. But I would not keep Cursed Merfolk on the play or draw against Songs. I like to see it later on when I'm developing for that kill shot board, but not early because it's just kind of dead in the water, so to speak. But incredibly powerful card. I played against 4 red-blue day 1, and it is almost essential to be able to navigate that matchup. They're so fast and so powerful now with Maui Shark that utilizing the Merfolk well is something you have to do. One of my biggest plays was Merfolk Snake. So I'd Merfolk to Quest, bounce it on 3 with Snake, and replay the Merfolk. I would do that all weekend. It's just free, unless they're going to use the Brawl. And like I said, if they're spending their 1 card that they were going to discard for the Merfolk anyways, and their 3 ink, I'm really happy to make that trade with them anytime. What is slowly but surely becoming a little bit of a signature card of mine, we have Pegasus, the 1-drop evasive 1/1. This card I've been a fan of this card almost the entire set. It is just a solid 1-drop against any deck. Even if I'm up against Songs, let's say Songs, because everyone says Songs can just shoot it. I'm generally, outside of turn 1, with this, if I see Cinderella, obviously I'm not playing a 1-drop if I don't have Olaf or Diablo to put down. But outside of turn 1, if they're willing to spend one of their valuable resources in a Let the Storm Rage On or a Strength of a Raging Fire on my Pegasus, I am happy to make that trade. And then if they don't, Pegasus is just ticking the game down on the side. Songs cannot interact with it outside of shooting it. And so it's just something they're going to, in the early game, ignore. And then by the time we get to the late game when we're developing those kill shot boards, I've crept my way up to 8-9 lore, and I can just threaten a 2-turn game by just unloading my hand after I get control of the board. People ask me, because coming into this event, the Song matchup was just thought to be dead in the water. And I was testing it, and big shout out to the Grays, James especially, for helping me out with this, local players, that I was able to kind of master this matchup, and I turned it around from a 0% win rate into about a 75% win rate in practicing best of 2s, including a blind mulligan game 1. And that really was the confidence booster I needed to take this deck into this weekend. We're moving into the 2-drops. I decided to max out my bounce package. Oh, hang on 1 second. While we're talking about Pegasus, let's go ahead and include the shift line. The shift Pegasus is essentially a 3-drop. When you play this character, if you use shift to play him, you give your entire board, all your characters gain evasive until the start of your next turn. It's just a board-wide gazelle effect. This was really just an incredibly powerful effect. So for certain matchups, keeping your board evasive was very strong against that kind of deck. Take Ruby Amethyst, for example. If I go a Pegasus on 1 and 2 1-drops on 2, shift Pegasus on 3, they can brawl one thing, but they waste their entire turn on that brawl. My other questers are still available to keep moving sideways. He was also really strong in taking out Diablos and allowing things like Madame Fox to take out Diablos. But let's talk about the Exodia combo. Exodia is a win condition combo in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. But if you open Pegasus and Shift with the 2 Cursed Merfolk, it is one of the strongest plays in the game. And I think one of the most people don't know what's about to happen to them plays. So if you open this hand, you ink, play Pegasus on 1. You don't want to play your Merfolk. Even if you know what you're up against, unless it's red-blue, you don't want to play your Merfolk on 1. If it's red-blue, please. But play your Pegasus, and then on 2, you drop out your 2 Merfolk. They're going to do whatever. And then on 3, you shift your Pegasus, quest for 6, and in most situations, they either have to spend their entire turn brawling a Merfolk, which is really bad for them, or you're going to get a 12 lore swing, and not many decks in the game can come back against that in a world where Goo Tomago exists. Very powerful play. I kept it because I needed that kind of edge going into this tournament. Best of the best players in the world, and it's just something if I saw, I knew I could rely on. In a lot of cases, play and draw. I did this combo probably twice through the weekend. I hit a red-blue player with it, and I hit a Songs player with it. Songs is the one deck that has the best outs to this combo, so it's not always safe there, but if you're on the play, it's a pretty safe call. Okay, let's continue. But as I was saying, I maxed out on the bounce cards, the Madame Snake and Fox. I feel like they were a key identity of this deck, and a big reason to play it over other decks. The Madame Snake and Fox also were integral to playing around Maui Sharks. Just the simple act of questing, bounce, replaying, and just inching yourself closer and closer to game is how you win late games against Maui Shark, generally. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Maybe I'll do a play-by-play commentary of one of my games against Red Blue that was streamed, but they were pretty exciting. For Goo Tomago, I said it in my video, I still say it, I think this is the best card out of set 6. I think this card's just absolutely incredible. The format goes on, people learn how to play against it, but we also learn. We get better at playing towards this card and learning how to properly utilize it. Shout out to my stream game, staring down 2 Maui Sharks against Dinkenfam. Dinkenfam, one of the best red-blue players in the world. Very nice fellow. Super fun to talk to and have this game against. But 2 Maui Sharks, Pirate's Life in the Yard, and Be Prepared in hand. And I had the Goo Tomago, and I was just sitting. I was sitting and waiting until the right time to play her and make a huge push for lore in that turn. I had people ask me if I top decked the Go-Go. Now, if you look closely, she was actually in my hand, but you can't play her until you can threaten lethal past the Pirate's Life. So, anyways, swung the Sirus in, gained 4 lore, pressured all the way up to 19, forced the Be Prepared and the Pirate's Life that he drew for turn. And it worked out really well for me. But just the proper use of this card almost requires a college math degree. But no, It's a very powerful card, and I think it probably gained me about 40 lore over the weekend. Everything from hitting Robin Hoods and Plutos and Steel Song to, people being scared to quest their Hirems in front of me all weekend, or else I was just going to hit it and gain a bunch of lore in a turn. It was a great card. Absolutely absurd. I don't think you can play any less than 4, but I'm not black and white in terms of deck building, as you can obviously see. To Sir Hiss, shout out to my friend Cody G the Wizard, for giving me this. I was testing between a few cards in the last minute, and Bonsai was in the slot, but Bonsai wasn't performing. He was getting answered by like a Tipo Vitalisphere a lot of times. He just really wasn't like gaining me as much of an advantage as I thought I wanted him to. And the uninkable count in this deck is very flexible. I'm at 12, but since we're looking to play so many cards out of our hand in a turn, just the more uninkables makes it a little bit scarier. So definitely err on the side of caution there. But I throw this card in the deck for testing. I play 5 matches. I don't see him. And I'm talking to Cody the night before, and he's like, just play it. And I'm like, all right, let's play Sir Hiss. I'm so glad he talked me into it. This card was amazing all weekend. Just being able to continue questing against Red Purple. Red Purple has a very difficult time dealing with this card. They have to run their Genie into it. And once again, generally, if they're spending that turn running their Genie into it or their Elsa into my Sir Hiss, I'm not mad about it. The 3 strength is very notable. Most things that can kill it will just absorb that damage, so there'll be 3 damage counters sitting on the board for you to gain with Go-Go. Sir Hiss also notably has a much higher strength than he has a lore counter, so Go-Go trades, if you swing him into something, you gain 2 effective lore in that, which is very powerful. Absolutely outstanding card. Green Steel was what took me out of the game, but if I saw him in the timely manner, he could have been that answer to the Diablo I needed there too. Wonderful card. Ursula Deceiver, 4 of. I said it before, this is probably one of the best cards in green, and things really haven't changed. A lot of people have been dropping her, but I don't think that's correct. The Songs matchup is innately very hard. Green Steel is a very hard matchup, and she's just kind of our equalizer. The more copies of these cards that we have is just the power in those matchups. And the way you play this card is so impactful, because you don't want to willy-nilly throw her out on 2 every game. You want to play her when the threat exists. So if you see potential shift Diablo, you generally play her unless you think your opponent's bluffing. If you see a Singer come out, you play her to answer the Singer. If you see the Ursula Double Singer come out, you play her as a pseudo Pete to get the value then and there. You play her before the B-Prep turns, before the Pirate's Life. You play her in response to the Maui Shark. But you don't just throw this card out there and lose her. You have to have a lot of intent behind this card, but she's incredibly powerful. If you have her in the bounce, it just almost solves a lot of the classic Steel Song matchup, like the Shift Robin Hood Sing a Whole New World matchups, just because that plays out very well on an ink by ink basis for us, both on the play and the draw. But yeah, I think 4 of was the right call for this card for sure. We already talked about Madam M. Fox, but huge shout out. This card is just what wins the Diggy Diggy Hole matchups. They go so wide and so aggressive, and just being a 4/3 is so powerful at just chipping 2-for-1s against that deck. And if you get your 2-for-1s against that deck, you're going to out-resource them. Docs be damned. We just have a lot of ways to be able to push that and in the game on our Genies and Rabbits, just drawing us and keeping us alive. 3 of Merlin Crab. So why 3 and not 4? I generally don't want to be trading an awful lot. This deck goes very wide, and I want to respect the bodies. But the 3 of is super impactful against Songs. Against Songs, we are a control deck. We are not an aggro deck. We are not necessarily just a normal tempo deck. Against Songs, we want to earn the board, and we don't want to let it up. And we want to get the ability to put a kill shot up by just slowly questing with evasives throughout the game, your Genies and your Pegasus. And then at the end of the game, they're going to drop a bunch of things out of their hand. And you're going to drop a bunch of things out of your hand. And whoever just ends the game faster is going to get the W. But Merlin Crab is super impactful for that matchup. I just didn't feel like I could run 4. 3 of the White Rose. So I need to talk about this card with its partner in crime, Prince Phillip, down here. Because they're very similar cards, but also very different. White Rose, when you play this character, gain 1 lore, 3/3. Prince Phillip, 3/2. Ward, quest for 2. So both are pretty good for 2 lore. The biggest difference is Prince Phillip is almost guaranteed that 2 lore. Outside of a B-Prep or a Tremaine, which Tremaine's not super effective against this deck because we have just the ability to continue going wider and wider, Prince Phillip's basically going to always get his money. White Rose can get answered by Ice Block Sisu, is a big one. Can get answered, Ice Block Brawl, can get answered by Madame Medusa. So if White Rose is 75% 2 lore, Prince Phillip's 95% gonna get 2 lore. And I thought a split of these cards was very good. I wanted the White Roses for the late game because when you need that instant lore against a deck like Red-Blue or Red-Purple, when they get you in their locks of answering whatever you throw out every turn, that instant lore from the Rose or the Goat just matters so much. But the Prince Phillip was just an absolute MVP in testing and just in the game. Being able to stack 3 damage counters on anything was huge and very, just, okay, you swing your Maui into it. Great. 3 damage on the Maui, I play Go-Go, and then between the Go-Go and the Prince Phillip, that's a quarter of the game already done. Fantastic. But the real strength of Prince Phillip is just the bounce and replay. So if I play him on 4, I actually like playing him on 4 if I didn't have a Genie. So I'd play like a Prince Phillip in a 1-drop, and then I'd bounce him with Snake on 5, replay him, and just use him to just start going taller instead of wider, and push the game out of my opponent's control. Moving on. 3 Kick Cloud Kicker. This one's a big why just 3? So this card is one of the best cards in Emerald, one of the best cards in the game, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. But I was struggling. So believe it or not, my results aside, I was struggling against Red-Blue leading into this tournament. And I was going 50-50. I was just play draw all day long, and I didn't want a split matchup. And I had an inkling that Red-Blue was going to be a lot more represented than it had been in the previous weeks because North America loves their Red-Blue. We have some of the most notable Red-Blue players in the world were competing at that event. Kick Cloud Kicker is not very good against Red-Blue. You can bounce Hiram. I don't want to bounce Hiram. I want them to have to quest with it so I can stick damage counters on it and make him a hindrance to my opponent. I don't want to bounce things. Like, there was a cool play I did with him where I bounced a human Sisu back to the hand so they couldn't trade into my evasive, so I got some more lore out that way. That was pretty nice. But really, his applications against Red-Blue are shockingly low. And so I dropped him down, and, I saw him when I needed to. Including the match, the semifinals, or the top 8 match against Zan, I did see multiple Kick Cloud Kickers. I was able to find him in the mulligan. It just sadly was not enough. But, amazing card, and it was really just kind of almost a last-minute decision to cut him down, just because my struggles against Red-Blue. I needed to patch up that matchup, and I'm so glad I did. I played against, I think, 4 day 1, 1 day 2, and I went what is it, 8-1 total against that deck. It's wild. Another spicy pick, I suppose, nowadays, Lyle Tiberius Rourke, I ran as a 2 of. If you're not familiar, when you play this character, chosen opposing character gains Reckless during their next turn, and whenever one of your other characters is banished, each opponent loses 1 lore. This is a card that I think a lot of people underrated going into this event. I wouldn't be surprised if I was the only player running this card at this event. It is a absolutely bonkers card. If you want to win against songs, especially Diggy Diggy Hole songs on the draw, Rourke is the way. Because they go so aggressive, but they run out of steam. There's eventually going to be a point of the game where they just aren't, they run out of their docks, they're just top decking, and you establish a Rourke down, start trading stuff in, and suddenly their lore is dropping. This one poor songs player, shout out, very kind opponent, I was able to win, and I think it was my on the draw win, but or on the play win, but he probably went up to about 26 that game, and I still was able to win just through clever use of Lyle Tiberius Rourke. And in other matchups, he is very impactful. Against Red-Purple, he's a huge difference maker. Red-Purple, generally, especially when you're running things like the Prince Phillip and things to protect them alongside, you reduce them by a couple lore in the early game, and that puts them 2 or 3 turns out in the late game. You can even do something as simple as playing a Lyle before the B prep turn if you don't have a way to clear it, and then they suddenly lose 3 or 4 lore. That's huge implications in the late game. Bounce and replaying of this card is fantastic. In my top 16 match against Red Blue, there was a time where I could have go-go'd and pushed myself pretty close to game, but he was slowly creeping up, very good player, and I was just, there's a part of me like, you're maybe 2 turns out of getting Maui comboed, and you're not 2 turns out of winning this game. We have to do something here. So I play the Rourke, Reckless the Hiram, and just start, like, as he answers my threats, which he has to answer the 2 questing threats instead of the Rourke, I was able to minus him down lore. I probably knocked him down 5 or 6. And that was enough to keep him away from comboing me out of the game, and I was able to take control of it from there. A very underrated card because it's a very complex card. It's not just a card you can throw into your deck and be the difference maker. I think it was in the Artifacts podcast where they're like, it's either the best card in your deck or the worst card, and that's very true. But you just have to find ways to make it into the powerful card that it is. Even in just like you're just racing and you're trying to get to the finish line, even just the Reckless and them having to answer your board is enough to put you over it faster than your opponent. This card I've been on the entire set. We've had our ups and downs. I've been anywhere between 4 and 0, and I finally decided on 2 as the last minute, and that was enough to get me there. Has his impact against Red Blue, but not a super strong card there. So, but he definitely saved me, and he got me to Disney World. As Lyle Tiberius Rourke might say, I love it when I win. We talked about Prince Phillip already. Genie Wish Fulfilled, the big powerhouse of the deck. I did a 4-2 split between Genie and Rabbits. Our draw cards. You know, there's not a lot to say about Genie. It's an incredible card. I kept it on the play blind every game that I could afford to. And it's just such a strong card because if your opponent can answer it, it's already replaced itself in your hand. If your opponent cannot answer it, it's going to exert so much pressure onto the side while I'm already going wide that I am just gaining so much from that Genie just going sideways. I'm going to discuss Genie Wars, but I'm going to save that till we talk about the cards I excluded. But long story short, I didn't want to fight any Genie Wars, as you can probably tell from my list. For Merlin Goat, I mean, he's the GOAT. Like, I love this card. This card got me a Mickey. This card is just absolutely bonkers. 2 Merlin Rabbit. I could not cut this card entirely. Green Steel, you really need to see a rabbit, like, to have a chance in that game. And, you know, keeping up with Red Purple. Definitely big ones, but I definitely a card that's very matchup dependent. I wasn't a big fan of seeing it against Songs. I love seeing it against Red Blue because if they blow it up, you just replaces itself. It scales very well. It almost scales better than Genie. And a lot of times, like, I'll see my opponent's hand with an Ursula. I will play the rabbit to draw out the brawl and then play the Genie afterwards so I can start establishing that pressure quest over and over and over again. And a lot of times it's just correct to play the rabbit before the Genie in general if you have them both. And I talked about Pegasus Shift. Okay, yeah, so that was my list. 62 cards, 12 uninks. I felt like it was everything I wanted and more. I don't even know, like, everyone asked me what I would change, and I don't know. I feel like it had tools for every matchup. I was first place in Swiss, so I went 5 wins, 0 losses, 2 draws in day 1. I started off with those 2 draws right off the bat, and then I had a mirror match against a green-purple opponent. Shout out JDZ. It was a super fun mirror, and it just reminded me why I love this game, and it kind of gave me the boost I needed to keep pushing, and we got there. We got there. All right, let's talk about some cards I excluded. What's that, Pegasus? Oh, I haven't told them about today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is no one. That's right. I'm doing this mostly for fun. But I have started up a Metafy, and if you are interested in supporting the channel and learning a thing or two along the way, please check it out. Have it down in the description below. I'll have text guides, different kinds of coaching and gameplay sessions, and lots of fun stuff to look for. Anyways, enjoy the rest of the video. Peace. The Clarabelle Shift line, I have been on all set in some variation, either the 1-drop or the 3-drop. I was more inclined to the 3-drop towards the later stages of testing this combo because the 1-drop isn't that impactful against red-blue anymore. If you can shoot an ice block, great. But there'd be a lot of situations where they would ramp with Sail, and there'd be 2 items on the board the turn before they were able to play their Hiram, and playing Clarabelle on 3 is just not good enough. Like, you pop one of them, okay, the Hiram pops the other, and you wasted your entire turn 3. But basically, I did not play the Shift because neither one of these cards made the cut for me this format. And because when I was playing the Shift, I was tunnel visioning it. I would keep it in my hand as almost a dead card, and my opponents would make reads on that and play around it very well in testing. And I couldn't just take the risk on not having every card in my hand be live. This is a very low to the ground deck. The 5 cost is the high end, but realistically it's a 3-drop. And, oh, something I forgot to mention about the Pegasus line, I'm going to just go back into real quick, is you can play the Shift combo as a 4-drops, like, and you can bounce and replay it, and just keep your board being evasive, and that is a very strong answer into a lot of decks in the turns 5 and 6. Like, being able to bounce and replay that to just continuously protect yourself before the prep turn or the Sisu turn comes out, massive. But yeah, anyways, that's why I know Clarabelle. I don't know if that'll stay the same in the future. It's an incredibly powerful Shift card. It's one of the most powerful cards in the game. It's a big equalizer. You draw it in the late game, you just win. But I couldn't risk having a card in my hand I wanted to save. And I wanted to have every card be live at any turn in the game, besides my 4-drop uninkables. Ursula is very similar. The 2-drop Ursula is very good. But the Shift, I was finding in the turns that I could play it, it was getting dangerously close to the turns my opponent could answer it. So if I'm playing it on 5 and my opponent, I may have 2 turns if I see it in the dream scenario. But realistically, I was not, it just was a card, similar to Clarabelle, it's a card combination. I just never wanted to have to save a card in my hand. I wanted to always be able to play almost anything. In green-purple, something a lot of people don't see at the deck is your field is your second hand. If I have a bounce card in my hand and I have 4 cards on the field, if I have 1 bounce card, the only card in my hand, and I have 4 cards on the field, I have effectively 5 cards in my hand. I can play, and just utilize the best combination of those cards to get me through. Obviously, playing like a maniac like that means you have to respect your opponent's board wipes in every way, shape, or form. But if you do, you get there. No bonsai. Like I was talking a little bit about Sir Hiss earlier, I just feel like he was just honestly a better bonsai for this event. There was just a lot of ways for bonsai to go down. People were on Vitalispheres, Ruby Chromacons, just ways to trade their little fellas into my bonsai. And if they could answer my Merfolk and then answer my bonsai, I was very cooked in my strategy. I wanted to continue going wide, and I wanted the ability to not have to play my 2-drop. So if I draw Sir Hiss, he could be Ink, he could be a impactful quester that game, whereas bonsai has to get played at some point. And that, I think, was the big selling point and why I did not want to run that card. Gazelle. Once again, I knew Green Steel would be around. We have some of the best Green Steel players in the world here. But I still was not loving the situations I had to play Gazelle in. If my opponent opens Diablo, I generally am not the most concerned. I don't care about Diablo as much as I care about Ursula Double Singer. If Diablo's singing 1 song, it's not a big deal. But if I have the Gazelle, for example, and I'm keeping a card to trade into the Diablo, I'm running the risk of just getting blown out by Let the Storm Rage on. And then suddenly I have a 1-2 that quests for 1 on field that I paid 2 for. That is not what I want. Protecting Merfolk is very nice, but I had a pseudo Gazelle in the form of Pegasus as well. I just did not feel like I was getting the value I needed out of this card, and it's just really understated in my opinion. Super cool card. I love it in combination with the bounce, like bouncing it with Fox, replaying to evasive my Fox to ensure I get my 2-for-1 was such a powerful play in testing, but she didn't get there. Peter Pan Shadowfinder. Biggest reason I didn't run this is because I was running a lot of evasives, but it was basically a decision between some of those evasives and Peter Pan Shadowfinder. And in testing, he wasn't always answering the Diablo. Like, worst case scenario, and they get the Diablo in the Cove, and I'm sitting on a Peter Pan Shadowfinder, which is a darn near useless card at that point. Just didn't perform as well as I hoped. And I don't really want to be spending turns answering my opponent. I want to go wide and tell them to answer me. Similar line of thought. Let's talk about Belle and especially Elsa. I mentioned briefly that this was not a Genie War deck. If you look at every purple deck out there, you will almost always see these 2 cards. I was testing and I dropped Elsa maybe 2 weeks before the event, maybe just a week. I think just a week before the event. I was testing. I was on 4 Elsa, 3 Elsa. It's an incredibly impactful card, but when I looked at the meta, there was only one matchup I felt like Elsa made a bigger difference in than others. I wanted it for Green Steel, and that was it. And I knew Green Steel was going to be less popular. Elsa does not feel good to play against Red Blue. And let's talk Genie Wars. If I am on the play and I play a Genie, my opponent answers with a Genie. I have the Elsa in hand. What do? You typically Genie or Elsa tap down their Genie, swing, and take it. But that is 5 ink. And that is -2 lore from that Genie not questing that turn. I told myself, we cannot fight the Genie War. The tools green has to fight the Genie Wars are sad compared to red with Brawl, Medusa, Tremaine, Sisu. They were sad compared to the ramp of blue to get to those higher and more impactful like Genie War turns faster and better. And they have the shift Elsa to make their Elsa more powerful. Any purple steel, I did not have songs like Zeus or Strength of a Raging Fire to really make the Genie Wars work for me. And so I told myself, why fight them? There's no reason. There is no reason to fight the Genie Wars. I would rather play Genie on 4, and then on 5, I play a Prince Phillip and a Sirus. And suddenly, instead of spending my entire 5-cost turn to play Elsa and take their Genie, I'm gaining 2 lore with my Genie, and I'm putting 3 more effective lore on the board to threaten my opponent. And if they play their Elsa on my Genie, I'm still going wide, and I'm still scary beyond that one Genie that already replaced itself. Similar theory to Belle, I think I just never had a situation. Hi, baby. Aww. Sorry, my baby girl just woke up and she had to say hi. She was missing me. But anyways, the similar thought with Belle. I just never had a situation where I wanted to trade into something. And my deck is so low to the ground, there is very rarely going to be a situation where I just had damage stacking on anything. The matchups, even against songs where you think Elsa shines, and she really does, to tap down those aerials, I feel like she came just a turn or two too late for my deck. I'm not Blurple. I can't ramp and be able to have that Elsa to answer before they're able to play their whole new world. I have to eat the one whole new world and use the Elsa to answer the next aerial that comes up or the next 5 singer that comes up, and it just never was working out that well for me. So definitely decided to abstain from those 2 cards, and I am very glad that I did. Let's talk a little bit about matchups before we're said and done here. I really feel like I shined a lot of ways into red purple. Red purple was my almost guaranteed 2-0. I had nearly 100% win rate into red purple, and I knew I would be up against some of the best red purple players in the world. Unfortunately, I did not play any red purple, which was a bit disappointing, but not bad back like when we look at it nowadays. But I definitely just feel like your ability to go wide against that deck and just put so many threats that they can't hope to answer them all. Their only big board clear is prep. Fantastic. That I could almost write a dissertation on Amethyst mirror matches at this point and the strengths and weaknesses of each. But I think definitely there's a way to play it where you try to swing the board with Kit and your 1-drops early. Then you go wide when they're looking to play their 4-cost Genie and Rabbits. And then before the prep, you get the Ursula down. Before the Sisu comes down, you start bouncing and having more powerful threats on your board, so they're only able to take 1 or 2 cards with their Sisu shift. Red-blue, I had struggled massively going into this event, and I in testing, I was 50-50 against it. And then I played the 2 of the best red-blue players in the world on stream back to back, and I was able to pull it off, and that was a big confidence booster because that's all I played the rest of the day from there. I guess 3, because Scott got second. The only one I missed, I think, was Sailor and I suppose John, but apparently at this event I was just collecting the best red-blue players like Infinity Stones. But the Sir Hiss definitely helped even out that matchup massively. Oh, no, we're good. And Songs was the one where a lot of people struggled going in, but I felt pretty powerful into Songs with the go wide strategy. You just have to respect the turn 1 Cinderella, only play into it if you can, and just start taking the board back with your highly statted Madam Mim characters, and eventually just throw all your little guys on the board and quest for game in 2 turns. I played against 3 Songs players, drew with 2, 2-0'd one of them, and that was about as best as I could ask for, honestly. Green Steel, definitely a weak spot in this deck, but I don't feel like I was dead in the water. Playing against, let's just say, the best Green Steel player in the world. Shout out Zan, very kind, very respectful opponent. We had a wonderful game. Got to 19 in game 1 against Shift Diablo Double Storm. Like, once I played my Ursula and saw Storm, Double Singer, and a backup Diablo, I was like, oh, this game's not even going to be close. But I was able to push and make it, as one short. There's probably a play I could have made that game to get it. I don't know. I would love to go back and look at it. I think I may do a VOD review of my feature matches. If that's something you guys might be interested in, definitely let me know. And yeah, I think definitely had a great run. I don't feel like this deck list has just like a lot of crazy weaknesses. Purple Steel mid-range. If you see a Shift Tinkerbell, it's a little scary. But Purple Steel mid-range is not the most powerful deck into the meta right now. It struggles into some of the stronger matchups in the game, red-blue especially, and red-purple. I dodged all the grab your swords in the world. There might be a couple more of those coming out now. But, you made a decision to go wide, and I think it paid off. Now, is this a deck that you can just plug and play and take to set champs? It's not as simple of a deck as just like, it's not just aggro, and it's not just tempo. It is a very flexible game plan deck. If you're willing to give time to cards like Rourke, to learning the sheer impact of your 1-drops, and by that I mean when you can quest with Broom and leave it out. If you keep in mind, Cursed Merfolk essentially has the word bodyguard printed on it, so you can keep your Broom safe and continue squeaking out lore from it. Choices like Sir Hiss over the obvious Bonsai. I think it could do very well in a set champs, but it definitely is a deck that requires a lot of practice and a lot of know-how. But yeah, that was my run. If you guys have any questions, please just let me know. I still am on cloud 9. Got myself a beautiful signed Baymax mat and some shiny cards that are locked away and ready to go to either PSA or Beckett or CGC for grading. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Announcement, next Tuesday I will have, so a week from today, and then if you're watching this video in the future, this is 1/15/2025, so probably miss it by then, but a week from today I'm doing my first YouTube live stream. I'm going to be opening one of the booster boxes from the case that I won for getting top 16 and just talking to you guys. If we get enough people in here, I might just do a giveaway if we get any exciting pulls. Yeah, I think it'll be a good time. Definitely show up, especially show up if you have any questions. And that's it. This little horsey's going to Disney World? This little horsey's going to Disney World? Oh, of course, this little horsey's going to Disney World. Can't forget about this little horsey going to Disney World. And absolutely, this little horsey's going to Disney World. Oh, I wasn't talking to my flying horse cards. Definitely. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you next time. Peace.